So in this video, we're going to look at embedding L2 and L3 language in primary. And I am going to talk you through a little workshop activity, something that you could try on your own at home or with colleagues if you're at a training session at school, or if you're in a live session, then you could do this during the event or before the event to kind of prepare for it. So you'll see I'm using a Jamboard. If you don't have access to the Jamboard, then you could just jot down the title of each frame that's in the middle here on a bit of paper and note your ideas and just do it by hand. And then the idea would be to share with colleagues. So what I'd like us to think about first of all is how we can embed languages, both the L2 and the L3, at any stage in primary from P1 through to P7, and how we can expose pupils to these languages. So how would we do that? When would we do that? So your ideas could be something big, like having a languages day, a French day, for instance. It could be something to do with planning and where it is on the timetable. It could be something to do with celebrating languages during an awareness week, linking with national things. So anything that you might do to expose learners to languages. So have a wee think of those activities and when you might do them, either in the day or in the school year. Jot down your ideas, and you might like to pause the video to give you time to do that. Okay, hopefully you'll have come up with lots of ideas and these can be shared with each other. Obviously, I've not got any ideas here. If you are using the Jamboard, then the sticky note function is here, and you can use that to click and note your ideas and type them up. And hopefully this would just start conversations. So you might like to ask each other for more information about things that people have come up with and to explain them and just really to start the ball rolling. So when we're embedding languages, it can be quite big things that we do. It can be things that we do on a regular basis. It can be part and parcel of our planning, part of linking across the curriculum, part of outdoor learning. We could be inviting parents in, we could be putting work up on the wall, and obviously we will have a progression of what we do in that language, and we may well structure that with 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, and building up to regular slots in the timetable as learners go up through primary. Okay, so what I want to focus on now, and you might already have noted these, so don't worry if you've already done this. I'd like you to think about everyday activities, part of the daily classroom routines. So really getting into nitty-gritty. What is it that you could do on a daily basis with your learners, either in the L2 or the L3? So here you might say something like, greet the learners in the morning and say goodbye to them at the end of the day. So what are things you do every day in the classroom that you could do in another language? Whether that be an activity or a type of language. So the activity could be something like playing a certain game that you play frequently. Or it could be, as I said, a language thing like using greetings. So have a go and note your answers, and then you can share with each other. So you might like to pause the video here. Okay, so hopefully you've got lots of ideas again. What I'd like you to think about now is maybe thinking about how you might differentiate some of these activities with different learners. How might you work with a composite class? How might you support learners that need a bit more support? How might you progress for learners who need more challenge? So even in these everyday activities, we can still think about those key concepts. And also I'd like to start to think about how you could link in with other areas of the curriculum. So if you've written on there, count the learners every day that are in the classroom to practice numbers, then how could you link that in with, say, another area of the curriculum like mental maths? So just starting to think and ask each other those questions. So you might like to take a few more minutes and just add your ideas. Okay, so that's just really the sort of getting us thinking. Now what I'd like to do is think about IDL, or interdisciplinary learning, or cross-curricular learning, however you like to think about it. And what I'd like you to think about are topics that you normally do, or that you've covered in the past, or would like to cover, that would count as an IDL sort of topic, that brings different areas of the curriculum together. So for instance, it might be something like space, or it might be cold climates, or the Titanic. Okay, so what might be a topic? And I'd like you to note those around the outside. You might like to put next to it what sort of year you would normally do that with, and maybe a rough outline of what you do normally in that topic. And then in the middle, I'd like you to think about core language that you would probably be doing in the L2 or the L3, and then see if you can make links between them. So how could you link in that core language with that IDL topic? So core language might be things like numbers, colours, weather, personal information. So think about the sorts of language that you cover in your own programme of work in your school or in your classroom, and then see if you can link the two up. So I'll give you a little bit of time for that. The idea obviously is to see how French could be integrated into whatever topic you're working on, and how you can use your topic to reinforce the French, practice the French, but also maybe to develop new language as well. Okay, so hopefully you'll be able to share your ideas and have a think about what might work for your classroom. Right, now what I'd like us to do is we're going to look at different sort of IDL topics, if you like, or big context, big ideas. And so I've chosen something that has a resource to go with it. And I've put in a picture here. So the first one is a famous artist, and I'm linking this for Spanish, and it comes from the Northern Alliance Family Learning site, which has these themed activity cards, and so you can see ideas for it in there. But what I would like you to do is think about a famous artist. We're going to look at Spanish artists. How can we link that with learning about Spain or Spanish-speaking countries like South America? In terms of cultural input, how can we look at it from an interdisciplinary input, different areas of the curriculum, and how can we develop language within that? And I'd like you to note your ideas. So for instance, for me, the first thing that comes to mind is colours, getting pupils to describe a picture that they've maybe painted or that they see, and look at colours that they're seeing. So you can do that, and then you can try and think about the language that would be involved. So you might actually note some of the phrases or the vocabulary in Spanish or in English, if you don't know, that you would be expecting. So for instance, you might want to be saying things like es rojo, or it is red, for instance. Okay, so there's a couple of different ones. So you can choose which one you want to work on. So the famous artist. Next one, we've got threatened animals or endangered animals. And here I found a resource from the Royal Zoological Society, language science in the languages classroom, for German. And again, I'd like you to have a wee think about different animals and how that might be able to bring in German language. And obviously afterwards, you can always go and look at these resources to support you. The next one is looking at the environment. There's a website called Stamp It, which has language nature cards in Gaelic and in French for learning about words in the natural environment. So if we were thinking about the environment, what might you do in that topic, and how could you link that with the Gaelic language? And lastly, here we've got communication. And as a resource, Passeport pour la Francophonie, which looks at Egypt and hieroglyphs in terms of communication, and can link that with the alphabet, for instance, in French communication systems. So have a wee think. It's quite challenging. So try to choose some that are more abstract and some that are more obvious. So choose one, work on your own or with somebody else or in a group, and try and think about the topic, the activities, and the language. Again, you might like to pause the video here. Right, then, once you've done all of that, I'd like you to maybe present your ideas to each other and share, and maybe flesh them out if they need a little bit more work. And then I'd like you really to have a go at doing something like this with your own planning or with one of these and your class. Last but not least, I'd like to think about how you feel after this training, using languages for IDL, for L2 and or L3, and for embedding languages generally, and whether you feel that it has helped you or not. So just think of a wee word or phrase and post that here. Okay, so good luck, and I hope that's helped.